One of the things that's lacking in many construction companies is appreciation. We tend to be transactional in nature, get stuff done, get it done because it's your job, and then pick up your paycheck at the end of the week. And all of those things are true. We should get stuff done, but we are dealing with human beings in our companies, and human beings require appreciation. And many of us are engineers by trade and by nature. We're more transactional, bits and bytes, spreadsheets, and plans as opposed to relational in nature. But we need to strengthen our ability in terms of building relationships with people. And that is the topic of conversation with my guest, Jesse Hernandez. Jesse is the principal depth builder at Depth Builder LLC, which is a consulting company. Good news about Jesse is that he has a lifetime of experience in construction, starting off in the plumbing trades, going all the way up through the plumbing trades to a production manager, working for a large GC, and then opening his own consulting company a number of years ago. And in this episode, we have extremely practical examples about how you can systematize appreciation and build relational capital with your people in your organization. You're going to walk away with an exact idea of how much time you need to spend with each person, how much time you need to budget with each person in order to build a relationship with them without seeming transactional in your attempt. Jesse shares stories about how he began in the trades as the abused, the one who the leader abused, to becoming a leader and abusing other people. And you know what I mean by that in terms of how people get treated on job sites. And then having an epiphany where he began to understand that that was not the way to treat people, and that was not the way to build projects effectively and profitably and sustainably. We talk about that shift. We talk about that mindset change. And again, we get into practical examples of how you can build relationships by showing appreciation to your people. So enjoy my conversation with Jesse. Feel free to share it with other people. And thank you for listening to Construction Genius. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Jesse, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Mr. Eric.
I'm excited to have you on the show because I know one of your great passions is leaders showing appreciation to the folks in the field who are putting in the work and making the money. So I'd like to dive into that in some detail today. So what do great leaders understand about appreciation that average leaders don't?
You know, the great leaders, the folks that I've seen demonstrated, it's exactly that. It's a demonstration of appreciation, and it's a way of life. It's not an event. It's not a scheduled quarterly performance review. It is an intentional way of living, thinking, and interacting with people. And so, like on the easiest end, or some indicators rather that I look for, is a leader that is intentionally meeting people, like going out of their way to introduce themselves to somebody. and the magic is not just that they're glad handing, it's that they put in time to learn something about the individual that they're shaking hands with. Eric, I'm sure you've met these leaders that, or people, we'll just say people, that when you talk to them, it is a profoundly different experience. You feel like you are the core, the center of their universe at that moment. And you can like not see them for 3, 6, 9 months. And then the next time you see them again, they remember you. They remember the details about you. And the feeling that you get is that they appreciated you. I've met several folks like this. I'm still not at that level where I can remember the name and all the details, but I definitely remember the energy of the person, the spirit of the conversation. And so the great leaders, that's tough, but that's where I think they start. And like I said, The effort that they put into connecting with the individual that is directly in front of them, the fact that they're listening demonstrates appreciation, demonstrates I value you. They don't have to say, hey, I appreciate you. Hey, we're going to have an appreciation lunch. And I think the average leader is on the let's have an appreciation lunch or a quarterly appreciation pot. And there are these kind of tactical, mechanical attempts at showing what appreciation is.
Yeah, I like those words. They're tactical and mechanical. We should do this because, the people tell us that's what we should do. So therefore, we go ahead and do it in that way. Um, this idea of intentionally meeting people, give give me a picture of what that looks like. Does that mean as a leader, I should be thinking about going out into let's say I'm the president of my company. How often should I be visiting job sites and talking to the laborers out there?
Oh, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. So I'll answer it. I think of it in like cascading
Hmm.
terms. The people that I spend most of my time with or that I have direct access to on the regular are absolutely the people that I need to be connecting with. So if I'm working in an office building and I walk in and there's a security guard that I see on the regular, I need to introduce myself to that person and get an understanding of who that human being is. Because one, they're protecting me, and two, they're a human being that brings tremendous value.
Yep.
Right. And just go keep walking, right? Keep walking down the corridor of the office, whoever you run into in the elevator, all the way up, the cleaning staff that comes through. Again, it's like I said, it's a lifestyle. Now, obviously within your staff, direct reports, duh. Now there's a thing, and I used to be stuck in this thinking, like, well, sure, but they never come to the field. And now I kind of understand, well, their work, like the leader's work, depending on what level of leadership or what level in the organization they're in, is not necessarily to be out in the field. But when the CEO or the VP or the department head actually do go to the field, then again, there's an intentional act, right? It's on their mental agenda to go and meet some people that they don't know, introduce themselves, and learn something new about them. And this idea of like going and kind of, I mentioned the tactical stuff, going and meeting people. It's not a natural behavior for a lot of people. I was facilitating a whole bunch of training. We're flying people in from all over the country to do this training, and a big element of it was we were going to be interacting with the folks doing the work. We're going to be studying them with video cameras and like all up in the middle of their stuff. And it was critically important that we form some kind of a bond and a connection with them because it was invasive. We were coming into their space. And right out of the gate, I made the mistake of just going and doing that. And the installers, the people that are delivering the value, they had a reaction that was less than awesome. So it was okay. From now on, we instituted an agenda item we called it visible leadership. And what you had to do was go pick up 3 pieces of trash, right? Demonstrate the behavior you seek. You want a clean job site? Pick up trash when you see it, and meet at least one person that you don't know. Come back and report to the group what you learned about them, which seems to me a very simple thing. For a lot of the participants, it was a very abnormal thing. I was like, oh my goodness, there's something bigger here. But getting out there, making those connections, guess what? We start forming relationships, right? And so I would say first line is meet the people you come into contact with a high
Yep.
frequency, learn something about them. And then whenever you're in a different venue, make it an intentional practice to go and meet the people that the nameless, faceless people that are actually making the wheels turn on this thing that we do.
Yep. So tell me about a little bit about your background and what led you to make this emphasis on appreciation.
I love this. So I entered the construction industry back in the 1900s, Eric, in 1995. I graduated high school. My dad's a plumber, so I'm a second generation plumber. Started my apprenticeship. working in the field, completed my apprenticeship, got my journeyman license, all that stuff, which I failed to maintain, but haven't touched tools in over a decade and a half. Anyhow, I haven't always thought this way, right? So I'm sharing this stuff not from a judgment perspective, but from I know the value because I've lived it. Because early in my career, as I got into the foreman level and superintendent level, et cetera, I had zero appreciation for people, and I ran through people quit on me regularly. And I finally got to a spot, and this was when I was a foreman, where one of my leaders, Jim Jones, he's passed since, he pulled me aside. He's like, Jess, you're making money on your jobs, you make schedule on your projects. He's like, and you've kind of hit a limit in terms of earning capacity and the influence you can have in the organization. He's like, you keep doing it this way, it's fine. So, but if you want to grow in this organization, you need to learn how to deliver financial results, which you can do, and develop people. And I said, come on, man, like, why are you changing the rules of this game
Mm.
here? But the truth was, I did want to grow my influence. So I put a ton of effort. Luckily, I worked for a great company that provided resources for me to like learn and expand my thinking. And through that process, I got introduced to continuous improvement, the lean construction stuff. And of course, because I practiced some of those ideas and principles, my bandwidth continued to expand. However, when I was doing that continuous improvement stuff, I did it from a perspective of let's optimize the work to optimize profits, which, yes. However, I was doing very little to develop the people around me. I was doing very little to remove the burden that I was putting on them, the burden that's like inherent within the work, and then the pressure and stress that I was putting on them. Um, and it's funny because when I was an installer, guess what? I hated all my supervisors because all they did was make my life hard. And then I became one. So, hypocrite, right? Again, continued my learning. Luckily, I got exposed to some Bryant Sanders, who's a coach of mine. That really, he describes it, and it felt like being pulled through a keyhole.
Mm.
He pulled my brain through that keyhole and helped me understand that all this continuous improvement thinking, this lean stuff, leadership stuff, people development stuff, like my job as a leader, as a facilitator, my responsibility to the people that I serve is to make their day easier, make their work better for them. So I was able to like change and apply all of the thinking and my experience and knowledge to making work better for people instead of optimizing production. The outcome is the same, except when I'm doing it in service to others, I get invited back to the party. People want me to come and evaluate the work and study the work and do some stuff so that we can put things into place so that their work is better. Whereas before, same thing, same lingo, same technique. Um, but when I showed up on a job site, I was like, people avoided eye contact because they knew I was going to say, this is what you're doing wrong. Here's some improvement ideas. And you have 3 people and you only need 1 person. I'm taking that person to the other project. All I did was compound the stress and pressure that they were dealing with. And so in that, we'll say evolution, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
of my thinking, it was like, man, I was that guy that felt abused, neglected, and taken for granted. Then I became the abuser, and like so I got it wrong, and like the pivotal moment was when I was learning this new way of studying work, and the new philosophy, I guess, the shift in the
Mm-hmm.
philosophy is we were studying an electrician. He was about 6 months away from retiring, and we put some stuff into place that improved his work. He did it, and he came back the next day, and we're like, "Hey, Ruben, like, how did it go? Like, we want to get your feedback." And he's like, "Guys, I went home last night, and for the first time, and I don't know when, I didn't pass out on my lazy boy. I was awake. I helped my wife wash dishes. I played with my grandkids. And if I'd been doing work like this my whole life, I would have 10 more years on my
Mm-hmm.
career." And we were in tears. Like, it was like so much movement, it was so moving. then I knew in that moment, like, okay, I got to do this because I can add life to the men and women that are doing the work. And it's rewarding personally because I'm contributing to the enhancement of their quality of life. And so, full circle, started in the field. I was complaining. I was the abused. I became the abuser. And now it's like, man, this is so darn important. And then, we all know about the shortage, the labor shortage that we can't avoid. And yes, we need more people. Yes, we need to do a better job about marketing the construction industry. However, we have this pool of people that we are neglecting, that we are failing to remove and redesign the work that they're doing. So there's tons of production just sitting there. Like, you don't need more people, make the work better, and then bring the people in. So, it's all mixed up in all of that, but it's a super important thing for me.
Okay, so I think you made a good point there in terms of that shift that was taking place where you understood the way you were doing things as a leader wasn't effective. As you began to make that shift and practice new behaviors, what was the initial response of the people that you were leading to that change that you were trying to make?
That's a phenomenal question. So, folks that came up with me through the trades, like they knew me when I was an apprentice and journeyman, when I started making the shift, they didn't trust it,
Mm.
right? And rightfully so, because it was a shit, like it was a big shift. Um, and so for a long time, like the way that felt, it felt like I had this enormous shadow, and but people couldn't see the new me; they could only see the
Mm.
shadow. And no matter what I did, I couldn't overcome the shadow. I couldn't predict how long it would take me to overcome the
Hmm.
shadow or shrink the
Yep.
shadow. And so internally, it was like super irritating and disappointing because I'm like, man, I'm working, I'm trying to change, and I'm still being judged for stuff that I've done, way back
Hmm.
when. Uh, Again, they evidence, right? The data, the volume of data that they had
Yep.
access to was that I was a jerk. The volume of data about me being a good guy or at least less selfish was very
Yep.
small. And so my expectation was unrealistic. Anyways, so that was a part. I had to come to terms
Yep.
with that. In terms of like my leaders, the people that I reported to, they could see my actions and my effort and the things that I was doing. So they were very supportive and motivated me or nurtured that pathway for me because it just made sense for the business. It made sense for me as an individual, and eventually the scale tipped. But I had to go back and do. I was overdrawn on the emotional bank
Sure.
account. Right, that's
Yes.
all social currency I
Yep.
had been
Yep.
expended, and so it was. If I think of it in terms of that, like I really had to earn all that social capital uh, from people that I knew. Now, from the new people that I would meet, it was a pretty smooth road, and from then it was just a matter of how do I get better at understanding how to better serve the person in front of me, and that took a lot of time to really learn how to do that. But that's what the transition was like.
As you began that transition, what kind of conversations did you have about with people who knew you about your previous behavior versus what you were going to try and implement?
Oh man, so a very common one was, why you a sellout? Why are you being a sellout, Jess? Like, why are you trying to be somebody you ain't? Like, I know you. Stop pretending. Who do you think you are? There was a lot of that.
But
Um,
no, but no,
some of the
but did
conversations.
you talk to your guys and say, "Hey, listen, this is the old Jess, this is the new Jess, and I'm going to try and be the new Jess." You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I got you. No, so once I figured through the funkiness, I finally started having conversations, and I was extremely clear with the guys that said, "Look, I am working on developing this new habit or this new skill or this new way of communicating. I would love that for you to get like you give me a lot of feedback, and I like it. Can you please give me feedback on this
Hmm.
specific thing?" And so that helped me like partner up with them and shift that maybe negative judgmental energy into positive
Right.
energy. So a lot of the conversations were that. And of course, with my peers, and I started building a network outside of the organization. Those conversations were me just asking questions like, how do you do this? What am I doing wrong? Why is it taking so long? Is there another resource? Is there another book? So on one end, it was, how do I harness energy? It was, negative or positive, but how do I harness it to help me accelerate my learning and my transition, like tighten up those feedback loops? And on the other end, it was like, where can I go learn? Because what I'm doing, it's just, it wasn't happen. It never happens fast
Sure.
enough for
No,
me.
I understand that. I think you make a really good point earlier about this idea of social currency. And, I'm sure some people are familiar with the idea of deposits and withdrawals in our relationships with each other. But the way you were describing it, you were basically socially bankrupt with the people that you were leading because of the way you were behaving, and you kind of had to come out of bankruptcy. And like we know in business, that doesn't happen overnight. It's something that takes a lot of time and some patience there, huh?
Oh my goodness, Eric, 100%. And yeah, even though like the economies of scale in terms of my responsibility and the things I was going through back then, and I was just, I was working for a trade. I was a plumber at the time. Um, I've been able to support or be a part of a lot of leaders that manage billion-dollar portfolios, um, and they have the same
Yeah.
problem. They've just like, especially now, right? Since the pandemic, there's a huge shift in terms of what people will tolerate in about how they are
Hmm.
treated or how they are
Yeah.
appreciated. So a lot of leaders are like, I need to, like, I got to change. The rules have changed. I've got to change with it. And regardless of their level of education or, dollar volume of responsibility, the problem is the
Yeah.
same. Like, they are socially bankrupt. And in order to overcome that, it's going to take significant effort and practice.
Yeah, it's interesting. Let's talk about that a little bit then. How can leaders begin to systematize? You've given some examples of that, but how can leaders systematize the appreciation that they show the people that they interact with?
I'm going to give some super simple
Please,
examples
simple is fine.
that anybody, like, people can listen and they can go do the damn thing. And then I'll reference some of the training that I've cobbled together as a result of observing people. Um, Simple example is become a better listener, right? But what does that mean? I used to think being a better listener meant me not talking until you stopped talking, but I wasn't listening. I was just waiting to speak. I was waiting for my turn to go and take up the airtime. So easy thing, pay attention to the amount of airtime that you consume. If your voice is heard more than anybody else's voice, you may not be listening. Um, and and ask. So there's a question, right? The types of questions that we ask indicate that we are listening. And what I mean by that is when I ask somebody, what do you think about us going to the steakhouse? I might be tricking myself in thinking that I'm showing Eric respect and appreciation and allowing him or inviting him to provide input on the matter of where we're going to eat
Right.
lunch. But I'm not. I'm like covertly telling Eric what I want
Yeah.
to eat.
Yeah.
And so the appropriate question is, Eric, what would you like to have for lunch? What do you recommend we go eat? That's a different question. Right. And so when we ask these types of questions, open-ended questions, like not the closed-ended, not the leading, what we do is we provide a venue for people to participate, to dance with us in this human experience that we're having.
Hey, this is Eric. Hope you're enjoying my conversation with Jesse. It's that time in the show where I tell you to go out to Amazon and buy my book because my book is awesome. Check out all the 5-star reviews. It's simple, it's effective, it's straight to the point. You'll be able to read this and use and apply the information and become a better leader immediately. So go out to Amazon, buy yourself a copy, buy a copy for every leader in your organization. Read it, use it, apply it, and see how it has a tremendous positive impact upon you and your business. Now, back to my conversation with Jesse.
Uh,
Let me
so
just make a note.
pay
Let me
attention
make a
to the
note of
type.
that real quick because I think we're familiar with this idea of close-ended questions, the yes/no questions. Open-ended questions are very hard to you have to practice that over the years, I found. But you made a distinction here with the leading questions. And I'd like you to
Yes.
explore that a little bit more. Why is it that leading questions are a losing tactic for a leader?
Oh man, beautiful question. Now, here's the deal. It's not an absolute
Okay.
negative. Okay? It is not an absolute negative. I think there is an appropriate venue. I call it solutionizing, right? When you ever have somebody, you say, "Hey, I'm working on this thing. I've been thinking about it." And they say, "Oh, well, what you need to do, you need to read this book. You need to check out this podcast." And you didn't even get to finish your thought. That is solutionizing,
Mm,
right? And so it feels like people are shanking you with unsolicited
right.
advice. As leaders in the workplace, we have been conditioned to default to that
Yeah.
behavior. And in the workspace, within our responsibilities, we're constantly negotiating and trying or guiding everybody and everything in a particular direction, which lends itself to always asking the leading
Right.
questions. Now, in the workspace, 100% appropriate. The problem is when we exit, like, we're human beings too. When we have like just a normal human interaction, guess what we do? We solutionize and we ask leading
Right.
questions. So it's me constantly bombarding you with what I think, with what I want, with what I
Right.
wish, never opening the door to understand what Mr. Anderton cares
Right.
about. And that's the difference, right? It's not, like I said, it's not an absolute
Right.
negative. But when you interact with somebody that continuously, I mean, you're a podcast host, you're asking phenomenal questions. And I keep flapping my gums because I believe, or you're indicating that you're interested in what I
Mm-hmm.
think, as opposed to say, well, Jesse, why don't you do, like, then you're telling me what to do. And my responses become more, they get
Mm-hmm.
smaller, they get less rich, and then it's just a transactional, right? So how do we transition from the transactional interactions to relational interactions? Well, we do it by asking curious and interested questions. But I first have to be interested in the human being in front of me.
How do I become interested in human beings that I have zero interest in?
Oh, I love that's a tough one. So first off, it is reasonable to cancel, evict, eject people from your life, from your space. I'm not a proponent at all of let's tolerate everything and
Sure.
everybody. You, and that's a question of values, etc. Um, but so, for example, there are some folks. And I've you mentioned practice. So it takes intense practice, rep after rep after rep after rep to get a handle on the open-ended question, the interested and curious question. And so I practice that. I'm flying around. I'm at the airport. I'll ask an interested question. And then it kind of like, I open Pandora's box because this person, now I'm learning everything about them and they're kind of consuming my time more than I expected. Or anyways, the burden is getting bigger than I expected. And I think it's reasonable to say, hey, I appreciate everything you're sharing with me. I don't have time for this. This is the end of the conversation and move on. And so a part of that is, how do we get direct about what our limitations and our boundaries are?
Let me ask it a different
Right. So
way.
if I
Let,
don't
let
want
me ask
to,
it a different way, Jesse, if I could.
okay.
Okay, so there are some people in this world who are transactional in nature in the way that you're describing. So
Yes.
they're a business owner
Yes.
and they have people working for them who do things for them. And it's not that they don't necessarily appreciate people, but they're not necessarily adept at developing strong relationships with them and demonstrating that appreciation and that value. And
Mm-hmm.
um, how can someone who is transactional shift to being more relational? What sort of things should they be thinking about? Perspectives that should they be taking on?
Okay. I'm going to steal this one from
Okay.
Covey. Uh, we can be efficient with processes, but not with people, right? And so, in terms of a thinking model, I would say transactional people, and I've been hyper transactional for most of my career. I was thinking of things in terms of how long is this going to take me, or how quickly can I get this done? And interacting with other human beings fell under that
Yeah, I get
umbrella.
that. Hmm.
Okay, ultra transactional. So now, when I'm going to be interacting with people, I know, like, okay, I can't. There's probably a 3x ratio to what I want it to be versus what it's actually going to
Yeah.
be. And so if I'm going to speak with someone, it's like break room. Break room is like the ultimate space for time bandits. And so if I'm in a rush, I'm going to avoid the break room. But if I'm going to the break room, I need to be prepared for a human interaction. And I can set the limits of what that is. I can say I actually have about 9 minutes before I need to start the next
Yep.
thing. So I'm going to go to the break room and I'm going to talk with somebody and I'm going to learn something new about them. And if the conversation continues to grow, it's very fair for me to say, hey, I got a 2 o'clock. Love the conversation, just giving you a heads
Yep.
up. And then the person can manage their response, etc. Does that
You know,
help?
it really does. I like what you said there about um, increasing the amount of time that it's going to take if you're going to go from transactional to relational. So that's an important thing because I do think that some of the transactional folks they miss that. So that's a good insight. And then the other one is actually setting the parameter of the conversation, understanding how long you have, and then communicating that. There's no problem in
It's it.
communicating that, and then being able to have an interaction with someone based on that parameter that you set. So I like that. That's very helpful. You kind of answered my next question. So let's say I'm a president of the company, and I decide I'm going to visit a job site, and I'm talking about the systemization of this appreciation. How much time should I set aside for a job site visit in order to make sure that I can be as relational as possible?
Ah, I'll give you a
Great.
formula. If you want to meet one person, like, budget 20 minutes per person that you want to learn something about. And that 20 minutes accounts for the walking time from the job trailer, from the office, to find somebody, have a little dialogue with them, and come
Yeah.
back. And so if you feel like you want to meet two people, give yourself 40 minutes. If you want to meet three people, give yourself an hour. And that's probably a generous amount of
Hmm.
time. The reason it's a generous amount of time is so that the pressure is down, so that your body language and your jawline doesn't communicate to the person in front of you that you are in some kind of mood. Because here's the other fact: the men and women out there that are doing the work, the only time anybody with authority or shiny boots comes to talk to them is when there's a damn problem. And so if you're the president of the company and you're walking out there, they can tell you've got authority, you've got influence, and they are terrified because no one has ever asked them, how are you doing? Why did you pick the trade? How is this project different than the last project you're on? Where do you live? Do you travel? Like, nobody has asked them those questions. And so the body language and the stress and the energy needs to be in a nice zen space, if
Hmm.
you will, so that that person in front of them can also open up and say, oh my God. And I'm going to tell, like, for real, I remember very few times where I talked to the VP of Spa Glass. I was an apprentice. If we had a quick conversation, super awesome. I went home and I told my mom, I told my dad, I told my friends. Like, it is a significant experience, provided, the factors and the conditions are such that all he did was demonstrate appreciation or interest in me. He didn't ask me about my PPE. He didn't ask me about my pre-task safety plan. He asked me about me. And I took that and told everybody about it. It was like I talked to a celebrity.
Okay, that's really good. First, I really appreciate that idea of budgeting 20 minutes per person and the effect it has on your body language. So I do think I just want to
Mhm.
make a note. Discipline yourself. If you're going to visit the field, it's almost like less is more, right?
Yes.
So if you can have one
Yes.
20-minute, you have that budgeted time and have an excellent conversation with someone, it's better than having 3 or 4 transactional conversations where, you're halfway moving down the road, as you're shaking the guy's hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. Oh yeah,
Now,
totally.
now let me just go back up to some blocking and tackling. So I'm in that conversation, and you mentioned a few of them, but give us 3 to 5 questions that I should be asking in each one of those relational type conversations.
Yeah. So an easy question, especially for craft workers, trade workers, is why did you pick
Yeah,
this
that's
trade?
great.
All right. How did you get into this
Mm-hmm.
trade? What do you like about the work?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you from? Which to me, I was born and raised in San
Yep.
Antonio, and only till recently have I done a whole bunch of traveling. And I always just assumed everybody's from
Yeah,
San
right.
Antonio on a
Yeah,
job
yeah,
site. That's not
yeah.
true, right? Where are you from? And boom, that's a whole other thing. Now, another one, again, and this one's going to push the
Yeah,
20
yeah, yeah.
minute budget. But an important question is, can you walk me through what you're
Mm.
doing? Teach me or show me what you're doing right now. What is that thing? What do you do with it? Avoid the question why, because it has an accusational tone often. Um, you're not doing a root cause
Yeah, yeah,
analysis,
yeah.
right? You're just trying to be
Yeah, yeah.
interested in this person. So asking them to describe or walk you through the work that they're doing or the system or the building and just sit back because it's coming.
That's great. So why did you pick this trade? What do you like about it? Where are you from? Walk me through what you're doing. It's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So then you've given us some real insights here about how to go from transactional to relational, how to budget your time, what kinds of questions to ask. Let's say I'm looking in the mirror and I'm saying, you know what, I am kind of transactional. I've perhaps withdrawn more from that emotional bucket than I've deposited. When I come on the job site, people are wondering there must be a problem, otherwise he wouldn't be there. How can I now begin this shift? Just give us a summary of what you've said or any other additional insights, Jesse, into how I can start showing appreciation as a leader in my organization.
Okay. So, in terms of the general audience, or I'll say that referring to the people on
Yep.
site, make it a regular practice. And what I mean by that, like maybe not daily,
Yeah.
because at first, daily feels
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
enormous. Weekly is good, but do put it on your dang calendar. Go out there once a week for 20 minutes, meet somebody
Yep.
new. That starts again shrinking the shadow,
Yep.
right? Now, for the people that you worked with directly, this and I promise people are going to say like, what in the world happened to you? Ask the people, your direct reports, the people that you have contact with high frequency, what makes you feel appreciated?
Hmm.
And then find a way to do that to some degree. Again, and that's a regular thing. Like, how do you build it into your cadence? How do we build habits? We got to test them out. It's uncomfortable. It's scary. And people, be ready for people to look at you with deer in the headlights. Like, what? And what are you? Nobody's ever asked me that. No one's ever talked to me.
Yeah.
Good. Because if that's their reaction, guess what? Proof positive, you're guilty.
Can you give me an example? Yeah, can you
Continue.
give me an example of an answer to that question, like a real life one that you've heard from either someone that you've talked to or that you yourself have heard?
Yeah, yeah. So when somebody's asked me, Jesse, what do you appreciate or what makes you feel most appreciated? My answer is it's easy, undivided
Hmm.
attention. If I'm talking to you and you're looking at your this or that, like just hurry up, like go do your damn thing. That's how
Yeah.
I feel. So for me, it's very easy. I know what makes me feel appreciated. Um, I've asked a group, I use, or you know what, practice it as an icebreaker
Sure.
in a group
Yep.
meeting, right? There's safety in numbers. You can hide
There
in
you
that.
go. That's a very good. That's
Um,
very good right there. Yeah.
so these types of questions, if you want to build your tolerance for them, do it in a group. And so I've heard people say, being recognized for the effort that I
Mm.
put in,
Hmm.
right? And that's a little different than getting an award for meeting a
Yeah. No, that's fair
milestone.
enough.
Being recognized for the
Hmm.
effort. I've heard somebody say, I appreciate when people recognize all the unseen things that I
Mm.
do, right? The setting up of the meeting, putting the email together, ordering the lunch, like all of I love it when people can
Yep.
say that. And so also I've heard people say like getting my check on Friday.
Yeah. No, I understand.
That makes me feel
Yep.
appreciated. So
Yep, I get that. Okay, so I really like this idea about the regular practice, these questions that you're asking. Give me just a couple more things, and again, you can summarize or add new about how I can begin to show appreciation.
yeah, so I'm going to tie it back to the listening
Mm-hmm.
part, right? So one indicator that somebody's listening is that their mouth isn't moving. A more advanced indicator that somebody's listening is they are asking interested
Mm-hmm.
questions. And then, like the ultimate indicator that you were listening that connects directly to demonstrating appreciation is taking action on what you heard. Meaning, it doesn't have to be a direct request for you to do something cool or nice for somebody else. Does that
Yep.
help?
No, it's really great. It's excellent. It's excellent. So, Jesse, tell the audience a little bit more about what you do and how they can get in touch with you, please.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm now a full time independent
Uh-huh.
consultant. Started my career, I mentioned, as an apprentice. Then I worked. So I worked on the trade side of the business. Went to work for a GC. Went to work for an owner, and now I'm a consultant. And so I just slid down the slide of credibility on my
I
career
like that.
path. And so I help fundamentally, the thing that I get the most joy out of is delivering a shift in
Yep.
mindset, helping teams, organizations understand that they can accomplish their
Yep.
goals and provide a meaningful experience to everybody in their charge. Now, some other things I do that are super awesome. I've the live stream, No BS with Jen and Jess, Jennifer, Lacey, and I do that every other Saturday. I've got the Learnings and Missteps podcast, and I've got some online stuff, the Emotional Bungee Jumpers, which it's a community, and all the things that we talked about, like the asking interested questions, not solutionizing, etc., we practice. That's exactly what we do once a month for about 90 minutes. It's a group of us. We continue doing that. And again, it's causing shifts in the way they think, shifts in the way we show up. And that's what I'm about. That's what I'm
That's
here
awesome.
for.
And how can people get in touch with you, Jesse?
So two places. I'm on all the
Yep.
socials, but LinkedIn is where I spend most of my
Hmm.
time in terms of engaging on social media, and my website, depthbuilder.com, where, of course, there's links to all my socials and the different communities and stuff that I'm a part of right now.
That's excellent. Excellent. And we'll have links in the show notes to those places so you can connect with Jesse. I really appreciate your time. I got one more question for you, Jesse. I'm in San Antonio. I'm on the Riverwalk. What is the one restaurant I need to hit up?
Tito's, and it's not on the
Okay.
Riverwalk. Tito's Mexican. It's right off of Alamo, which is just a jaunt down from the Riverwalk. Um, it's not the high end,
No, no, no.
fancy,
No,
touristy
that's good.
thing, but they've got great food. And then Eddie's Taco House is nowhere near the river. Best tacos in the country.
Okay. Eddie's Taco House. So we got Tito's.
Yes, there's two spots.
Oh, good. Okay. So
Yes.
we're going to put those links in the show notes to both of those places. And we're going to make sure that people, the next time they're in San Antonio, they avoid the tourist places and go to the good places, huh? That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yes,
Jesse, I
sir.
appreciate your time and your generosity. These insights I know are super helpful for my audience. So thank you for coming on Construction Genius here today.
Thank you, sir.
I really enjoyed that conversation today with Jesse. I hope you did too. Feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn and at his website. Links are in the show notes. And if you're in San Antonio, man, if I ever get to San Antonio, I'm going to Eddie's Taco House and Tito's Restaurant, Tito's Mexican Restaurant. The links are in the show notes. And feel free to share this interview with other people. I think there are some significant insights in this discussion that will help you to become a better leader. I encourage you to take them and to be much more intentional in the appreciation that you show to the people in your organization. Thanks for listening today, and we will catch you on the next episode.